It was a quiet night in Beason, Illinois, a small, close-knit town where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. The G family had gone about their usual evening routines, settling in for what should have been just another peaceful night. But that illusion of safety was about to be shattered. Just before midnight, chaos erupted inside their home. A single figure moved through the darkness, bringing with them a wave of terror that would forever scar the community. Sounds of struggle filled the air, a desperate fight for survival. And when it was over, the silence that followed was more chilling than anything that had come before. By morning, detectives were met with a scene they would never forget. But amidst the horror, there was one tiny spark of hope, a lone survivor who could hold the key to unraveling the mystery. What happened that night in Beason? And what drove someone to commit such a brutal act? In the quiet town of Beason, life moved at a peaceful pace. With a population of around 200, Beason seemed almost forgotten amidst the surrounding farmland and gently rolling hills. Two local families, the G family and the Constant family, were at the heart of this story, sharing life in Beason during the late 1990s. Raymond G was a hard-working man with a tenacious spirit. He started his career in construction, working under his stepfather's company in Lincoln, Illinois, the nearest town equipped with basic necessities, from schools and restaurants to a small airport. Raymond's stepdad and his mom lived there as well, providing a touchstone for the family. Raymond's dedication to his craft allowed him to save enough to eventually buy a small property on the outskirts of Beason. With a ranch-style home, a two-car garage, and a sprawling yard, Raymond was finally able to establish his own business, G Construction. To help offset the costs of running a business, Raymond decided to rent out a room, which brought Ruth Constant G into his life. Ruth, along with her young children, 3-year-old Justina and 1-year-old Dylan, moved into Raymond's home as tenants. Soon enough, a bond grew between Raymond and Ruth, and their initial friendship evolved into a romantic relationship. Known for her warm personality and sense of humor, Ruth complemented Raymond perfectly. Their relationship blossomed, and in 1997 they tied the knot. Their family grew to include 2 more children, Austin and, a year later, a daughter named Jessica. However, life took a challenging turn when they discovered that Jessica had a severe neurological condition. The lack of specialized facilities in Beason meant Jessica's care needs couldn't be met locally. The family was faced with the heart-wrenching decision to place her in care 50 miles away in Peoria, Illinois, where she was made a temporary ward of the state. Tragically, Jessica passed away before further tragedy struck the family. Meanwhile, Raymond and Ruth faced additional challenges with Dylan, who had boundless energy and was frequently reported for behavioral issues. After seeking help, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and while therapy offered some improvement, it didn't entirely resolve his struggles. During this period, Raymond's daughter from a previous relationship, Nicole, turned 18 and began dating Christopher Harris, a 21-year-old local. The young couple soon married, eventually moving close to Raymond's home, and welcomed their first child, Alyssa Harris. Overjoyed, Raymond and Ruth embraced their roles as grandparents, often watching Alyssa when Nicole and Chris were at work. In the summer of 2009, Nicole and Chris had their second child. With a growing family, Adam Kohler and Nicole's grandfather William Pudge Kohler decided to help Nicole with home improvements, laying new carpet in her house that September. The following day, a local boy, 10-year-old, visited Raymond's house to show off his new bike. But as he approached the porch, he noticed blood smeared across it and the door ajar. Terrified, he ran to Nicole's nearby home. Alarmed, Adam and Pudge, who were at Nicole's house, quickly made their way back to Raymond's house. As Adam stepped onto the porch, he saw a knife lying at the bottom of the steps. Summoning his courage, he entered the house and turned on the hallway light, only to be confronted by an image that would stay with him forever. Raymond lay face down in a pool of blood. Shaken, Adam ran back to Pudge, urging him to call 911. When authorities arrived, they entered a scene of unimaginable horror. Blood spattered the hallway, and Raymond's body bore signs of a brutal attack. Moving deeper into the house, officers found evidence of intense violence, with walls damaged and belongings overturned. The chilling discovery of 14-year-old Dylan's lifeless body outside the main bedroom left investigators piecing together the events of that tragic day. Dylan's head and body were brutally injured. Blood was splattered so extensively it reached the ceiling, casting an eerie shadow over the scene as officers cautiously moved through the house. The police continued their search, which led them to the main bedroom, where they found Ruth lying on the floor, dressed in her nightgown. The trauma she had suffered was overwhelming. Her skull was partially collapsed, and the walls around her bore heavy bloodstains. As they continued into the adjoining bathroom, the officers made another heartbreaking discovery. 11-year-old Austin, clad only in underwear, lay face down on the bloody tiles. From the condition of the scene, it seemed the family had been completely unprepared for the violence that had unfolded, likely attacked as they prepared for bed the previous night. Uncertain whether the assailant was still hiding in the house, the officers moved carefully down the blood-streaked hallway, passing by Dylan's lifeless body and making their way to 16-year-old Justina's room. What they found there was even more disturbing. Justina's room was soaked in blood. Every surface bore signs of the violence she had endured. Her body lay on the bed, head hanging over the side with a puddle of brain matter below. She had suffered the worst injuries of all, with clear evidence of extreme brutality. But just when the officers thought they had seen the worst, they found one last heartbreaking scene. In a darkened closet, they discovered the tiny form of a 3-year-old girl lying crumpled on the floor, blood covering her, and with a wound where her skin had peeled back above her ear. The sight struck the officers deeply. Though hardened professionals, they weren't prepared for such gruesome scenes, especially one involving a child so young. Amid this despair, a glimmer of hope emerged. One of the officers noticed the little girl was still alive. Quickly, a paramedic carried her out to an ambulance, rushing her toward emergency care. Soon, Nicole's husband Chris arrived at the G family's home, summoned from work after the tragic news broke. When he arrived, officers confirmed the tragic reality. His family had been murdered, leaving behind a heavy atmosphere of grief. Yet, they shared one piece of good news. The young girl, Tabitha, had survived. For those gathered, her survival felt like a tiny victory amidst the overwhelming loss. But Chris's reaction was less of relief and more of nervousness. Without a word, he hurried back to his truck, driving rapidly toward the trauma center where Tabitha was being treated. Back at the crime scene, the police began examining the house for any clues. They found a bloody handprint on the bathroom vanity where Austin had been discovered, and a fresh shoe print outside, identified as coming from a Swiss tennis shoe. The officers went through the small community, gathering tips and interviewing neighbors. One witness reported seeing a silver pickup truck with tall exhaust pipes driving by around the time of the murders, a potential lead that the police would explore. The autopsies revealed the true extent of the brutality. Each family member had suffered severe blunt force trauma rather than gunshot wounds, as initially suspected. Raymond G., the father, had sustained 39 distinct injuries, 13 of which were to his head. Ruth's body showed 28 injuries across her body, and her skull had been crushed. Austin had at least 21 blows to his skull, and indications showed he had been pushed against hard surfaces, with signs that his feet had been stomped on. Dylan bore over 100 injuries and at least 52 blunt force impacts, while Justina suffered extensive head trauma, with part of her skull missing. Tabitha, though alive, was fighting a difficult battle. She had multiple skull fractures and severe brain swelling, and the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize her. Despite the nightmarish situation, her survival brought a glimmer of hope amidst the tragic loss of the G family, leaving investigators with a critical witness who might hold the key to solving the case. Tabitha lay in the hospital, unable to speak or see due to severe facial swelling. Despite this, there was a glimmer of hope. She could still move her arm, showing that she had some strength left. To aid her recovery, doctors made the difficult choice to remove a few small sections of her skull to alleviate the pressure from the swelling, hoping it would allow her brain to heal more effectively. It was a frightening situation, but the medical team was dedicated to saving her life. Nicole stayed by Tabitha's side throughout her hospital stay, enduring the tense atmosphere, with police officers stationed close by. Authorities were taking no chances, knowing that Tabitha was the only survivor of the terrible tragedy, and they feared the perpetrator might attempt to harm her again. This constant police presence underscored the importance of keeping her safe, and Nicole cooperated fully, sharing any information she could about her family and the events leading up to the incident. During this difficult time, Chris was a source of support for Nicole, spending long hours with her as she navigated the shock and confusion. Their relationship had its rocky moments, marked by multiple breakups, but they had recently reconciled earlier in 2009. However, tensions remained under the surface, especially as the investigation intensified. Days went by, and the police were left without any solid leads. They had examined every clue, from the suspicious vehicle sighting to the distinctive shoe prints, but still had no suspects. The G family was well liked, known for their kindness and generosity, and no one in the community had any grievances against them. In response to the uncertainty, the police advised the townsfolk to be vigilant, encouraging them to lock their doors at night, check on their neighbors, and stay alert. As the days passed, the community gathered to mourn the loss of the G family at a funeral held on the 28th of that month. It was a somber day, filled with grief and an undercurrent of fear, as everyone knew the killer remained at large. Tabitha was still clinging to life in the hospital, her fight for survival a source of both hope and sorrow for those who knew her. Then, in a twist of fate, a major break in the case occurred at the very hospital where Tabitha was being treated. After finishing his shift guarding Tabitha, one officer shared an elevator ride with Chris Harris, who had just visited her room. The officer happened to look down and noticed Chris's shoes. They were K-Swiss sneakers with a distinctive tread, similar to the print found at the crime scene. He immediately informed detectives, and Chris was brought in for questioning. The police compared the tread of Chris's shoes to the print found at the scene, but discovered they were slightly too large, just a half size off. Despite this, detectives sensed something was amiss, prompting them to proceed with fingerprint analysis. To support Chris's innocence, his brother, Jason Harris, provided an alibi, claiming they had both been away from Beason on the night of the murders. Nicole, infuriated by the suggestion that Chris might be involved, defended him passionately on her MySpace page, posting an emotional message in his defense. "This whole situation is such a mess and so unfair," she wrote. While in custody, the police photographed Chris's body and found no visible injuries, aside from a blister on the palm of his right hand. Meanwhile, investigators searching near Jason's house discovered a tire iron by a creek, a potential clue linking back to the crime. On October 2nd, police seized Chris's truck, which was registered to Jennifer, Jason's girlfriend. Both Jennifer and her mother, Sarah, had previously offered alibis for Chris and Jason, claiming they had been with them on the night of the murders. However, as the investigation progressed, these alibis unraveled, ultimately leading to Jennifer and Sarah's arrest for obstruction of justice. The investigation took a dark turn as detectives managed to discredit the alibis given for Chris and Jason. A critical breakthrough came when police identified Chris's palm print at the crime scene, linking him to the tragic events. Additionally, a woman named Lori Cole, an armed security guard, approached investigators with an unsettling story. Lori recalled that on the night of the murders, around 11:35 p.m., both Chris and Jason had come to her door, inviting her to party. She declined, explaining she needed to rest for work, but she noticed their Ford Ranger parked outside, similar to the truck she'd seen earlier that evening. Although she turned them away, their behavior had made her uneasy. They appeared to have already been partying and seemed reluctant to end the night. Another key witness, Christy Moore, came forward as well. Christy, who admitted to an on-again, off-again relationship with Chris, said he had called her late that Sunday night. He seemed eager to meet, but she was busy with her children. She agreed to see him after they went to school the next morning. Chris arrived at her home in Clinton, just a 15-minute drive from Beason, roughly 12 hours after the murders. Christy noted that Chris acted completely normal, even posing for selfies with her. In the photos, they were affectionate, smiling, and kissing. Christy also mentioned that Chris showed no visible injuries or unusual behavior, though she hadn't seen him in months, likely because of the recent birth of his child with Nicole. Throughout the investigation, Chris maintained his innocence, denying any role in the murders. However, when confronted with fingerprint evidence, he invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and hired a lawyer. It seemed he was prepared to let the legal process unfold. But as pressure mounted, his brother Jason faced a dilemma. Originally charged with obstruction of justice, Jason's charges were escalated to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, the same as Chris's charges. With the threat of a life sentence looming, Jason faced a critical choice: remain silent to protect his brother or reveal the truth to save himself. Ultimately, Jason began to talk, painting a disturbing picture of that night. According to him, it began with a heavy night of drinking and drug use. Under the influence, he and Chris wanted female company and tried reaching out to former girlfriends, who both turned them down. Jason recounted that they first attempted to visit Lori Cole. While Jason waited in the truck, Chris approached Lori's door, but she declined his invitation to hang out. Next, Jason claimed that Chris became fixated on going to the G family home, leading to a chilling sequence of events. Jason's accounts varied, with over a dozen versions told to investigators. Still, one constant in his stories was the assertion that Chris was the one who initiated the violence. According to Jason, Chris had an obsession with Justina G., the 16-year-old daughter of the G family. Convinced that she had been flirting with him, Chris believed Justina was romantically interested. Jason claimed he remained in the truck while Chris approached the G residence, possibly armed with a tire iron, depending on the version. In one telling, Raymond G., the father, answered the door, and a brief confrontation turned deadly, with Chris allegedly retrieving a tire iron from the truck. From his spot in the truck, Jason reported hearing muffled screams and thuds, sounds of a nightmare unfolding inside the house. In a chilling moment, he recalled seeing Dylan dash out of the house, bleeding heavily, with Chris following close behind. Jason saw Chris strike Dylan multiple times with the tire iron before returning inside. Miraculously, Dylan managed to get back to his feet and re-entered the house, where the violence continued. Moments later, Chris emerged, climbed back into the truck, and casually discarded his shoes and the tire iron out the window. A chilling detail in the investigation was a recent complaint of attempted sexual assault involving Chris and Justina, which had been dropped only a week before the murders. Jason suggested that Chris had indeed gone to the G residence with inappropriate intentions, though these motives did not ultimately materialize. Following Jason's testimony, investigators retraced his described path. Along the road, they found the discarded shoes and tire iron. Forensic analysis confirmed that DNA on these items matched both Chris and the G family, sealing the case. On May 31, 2013, a jury found Christopher Harris guilty of the G family murders. On July 19th, he was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms, along with 30 years for the attempted murder of Tabitha, 30 years for home invasion, and 20 years for robbery. Chris's defense team attempted to argue that he had stumbled upon Dylan committing the murders and had killed Dylan in self-defense. This claim, however, was swiftly dismissed. Just before sentencing in 2013, Chris and his legal team sought a retrial, but the request was denied. In 2019, they appealed, but the appeal was also denied. The story took another twist when a former cellmate of Chris came forward, claiming that Chris had confided in him about the events of that night. According to this cellmate, when Chris arrived at the G home, an argument broke out with Raymond, escalating to violence when Chris struck him with the tire iron. Ruth, hearing the commotion, rushed in, only to become Chris's next victim. During the chaos, Dylan grabbed a kitchen knife to protect his mother but was overpowered by Chris. The cellmate added a disturbing detail. Chris reportedly expressed no remorse, his only regret being that he hadn't burned the house down, believing it would have concealed his involvement. As evidence stacked up, Nicole's stance shifted from defending Chris to condemning him. During the sentencing, Tabitha, now 7, delivered an emotional statement that moved the courtroom. She said, "I am 7, and it still breaks my heart. I wish you were dead, and my brother, sister, mommy, and daddy were alive. You have to say sorry because do you know how badly that broke my heart?" Jason, having testified against Chris, received a reduced 10-year sentence with credit for time served, a decision that sparked debate. Many questioned whether it was fair, given his passive involvement in the brutal acts. He had multiple opportunities to intervene but chose not to, even as Dylan called out for help. Nonetheless, his testimony played a significant role in securing justice for the G family. Jason's girlfriend, Jennifer, and her mother faced probation and fines for concealing evidence. Meanwhile, Tabitha, who had been cared for by state troopers during her hospital stay, formed a close bond with her caregivers. They showered her with attention, painting her nails, reading stories, playing games, and even organizing a birthday celebration to lift her spirits. Despite the numerous surgeries she underwent, Tabitha made a remarkable recovery, with her brain injuries allowing her to forget the traumatic events that took her family. After a period in foster care, Tabitha found a loving home with her sister Nicole. In 2014, the case gained further attention on the show When Murder Comes to Town, which aimed to uncover details of the G family murders. However, the show's portrayal sparked controversy as it leaned toward the defense's narrative, suggesting that Dilla was a troubled teen capable of violence. This characterization infuriated those who had worked on the case. Officers involved released an open letter challenging the show's depiction, emphasizing Dylan's bravery, not just as a victim, but as a heroic young man who tried to protect his family. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.
Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Rui Pedro Teixeira. This horrible case took place in Lausada, a village situated in the northern region of Portugal, a location known for its vineyards, renowned green wine, and its distinction as the youngest population in the country. Nestled in the heart of the municipality bearing the same name, this village is in close proximity to the northwest coast of Portugal, a hub of summer enjoyment for tourists hailing from various corners of Europe. Within this quaint village, on January 28, 1987, Rui Pedro Teixeira was born. His parents, Filomena and Manuel, lauded his lively and jovial nature, along with his remarkable creativity and imagination. In a nutshell, this family, complete with their youngest daughter Karina, led a harmonious and contented life. Rui Pedro was a bundle of energy as a child. After completing his daily school assignments, he engaged in spirited soccer matches with his beloved cousin João André and other local children. His aspiration was to become a professional goalkeeper, and thus he consistently played in that role. Among the boys' other pastimes was cycling, and he could often be spotted zipping through the village to ensure he reached his daily math tutoring sessions punctually. However, one shadow cast over his otherwise serene childhood. Rui Pedro grappled with epilepsy. Manuel and Filomena were the proprietors of a driving school. One day, an ordinary young man named Afonso Dias arrived at the academy with aspirations of obtaining his driver's license. Filomena swiftly discovered that Afonso was facing financial hardship. Renowned for her exceptional empathy, she immediately sought ways to assist him. Initially, she provided him with clothing, and as their bond deepened, she extended the opportunity for him to work at the school, enabling him to earn extra income. 3 years passed, and thanks to Filomena's kindness, Afonso became a truck driver at just 22 years old. The family trusted Afonso so much that they relied on him to pick up Rui Pedro and Karina from school and bring them back home. To do this, Afonso used his brother's car, a Fiat Uno. As they spent time together every day, an unusual friendship blossomed between Afonso and Rui Pedro. The family didn't think it was strange, especially because Afonso had a youthful and childlike personality, which made him and Rui Pedro feel like brothers. However, the maternal grandparents viewed their relationship with suspicion. Manuel, on the other hand, was concerned about Afonso smoking around the child and considered him a bad influence. Worried about the consequences of this friendship, Manuel talked to Filomena about it, but she was convinced of Afonso's good character and believed he meant no harm. In the end, like in any good marriage, they reached a compromise, with Filomena agreeing to keep an eye on their interactions. On March 4, 1998, around 2 p.m., Rui Pedro rode his bicycle to his mother's workplace, which was just a few blocks away from home, to tell her that Afonso had invited him for a ride in his brother's car. Filomena wasn't happy about the idea and told him not to go. Instead, she sent him to a nearby field where his friends were waiting to play soccer, emphasizing the importance of making it to his 5 p.m. class on time. Though he was initially disappointed, Rui Pedro obeyed. He removed his bicycle helmet and headed to the soccer field. When he arrived, he found his friends, except for João André, whom his mother didn't allow to go out. Surprisingly, a black Fiat Uno driven by Afonso pulled into the field a few minutes later and stopped beside Rui Pedro. They had a short conversation, and then the child put aside his bicycle helmet, got into the car, and bid farewell to his friends through the passenger window with a simple gesture. Between 5 and 6 in the afternoon, a phone call shattered the family's peace and marked the start of the Teixeira family's worst days. Rui Pedro's tutor called to inform them that the boy hadn't attended his class. This was highly unusual since Rui Pedro had never missed a class before. Panic set in as his parents feared that an unexpected epileptic seizure might have rendered him unconscious, potentially causing severe brain damage if he didn't receive prompt attention. The news quickly spread throughout the village, and concerned residents sprang into action. They organized small search teams to cover the entire town. Soon, they found their first clue. A neighbor reported that around 3 p.m., he had spotted Rui Pedro's bicycle hidden among the bushes near the soccer field where he had been playing. Manuel and Filomena knew their son very well. They understood that his bicycle meant the world to him, and he wouldn't just leave it behind without a good reason. This led them to believe that Rui Pedro might have been taken against his will. Without hesitation, they rushed to the police station to report his disappearance. Upon receiving the report, the police launched their investigation by questioning the 3 boys who had been playing soccer with Rui Pedro. These friends recounted how a black car had entered the field to pick up their friend, identifying Afonso as the driver. They emphasized that Afonso's behavior had been strange and controlling toward their young companion. Initially, the officers doubted the children's accounts and chose to disregard their statements. However, they mentioned the misleading lead to the mother, which raised her suspicions. Filomena then mentioned Rui Pedro's request from that same afternoon to meet up with his friend. Immediately, everyone's attention turned to the truck driver, and the authorities proceeded to search his home. Afonso welcomed the officers who wanted to ask him some routine questions. As the last person who had seen the child, his statement could provide crucial information. However, the truck driver remained unusually calm and claimed not to have seen Rui Pedro. His reaction raised suspicion among the agents, given the numerous testimonies they had collected. Consequently, he was taken to the police station for further questioning. Once at the precinct, Afonso attempted to offer an excuse. He mentioned that his brother had asked him to take the car for its annual inspection, a mandatory requirement in Portugal for vehicles over 8 years old. However, records showed that he had never attended the scheduled appointment for that afternoon. Afonso persisted with his story, continuing to deny that the child had gotten into the car hours earlier. He admitted to a brief encounter of only 5 minutes with Rui Pedro before 2 p.m. Afterward, he claimed to have driven to a nearby town, which was about 15 kilometers from Lausada, and parked in front of a pharmacy. Afonso asserted that he stayed in the car for a while before deciding to take a stroll through the city, even mentioning that he admired the shop windows. When he grew tired, he drove to his girlfriend's house, arriving at 6:45 p.m. The woman lived in another village in the region, just 11 minutes away from Lausada. Meanwhile, at the police station reception, Rui Pedro's grandfather and cousin anxiously waited, determined to apply pressure to expedite the investigations. When Afonso's interrogation concluded, the two of them crossed paths with the suspect in the hallways. Upon seeing him, the grandfather desperately inquired about his grandson's whereabouts and offered anything in exchange for an answer. Afonso broke down in tears and insisted that he didn't know where the child was, but he warned that if they wanted to find him, it was essential to close all borders because he had probably been kidnapped and was on his way to a foreign country. The cousin also confronted Afonso and even mentioned a conversation they had with Rui Pedro the day before. The man's only response was to shout at the boy to be quiet once and for all. But the cousin remained unfazed. On the contrary, he continued the narrative with more details. Afonso had offered to take both of them to meet prostitutes and said that the meeting point would be a vacant lot. Following these events, a large-scale police investigation was launched in the region, involving local residents, firefighters, and even the assistance of bloodhounds to find the trail of the lost child. The officers believed that the boy might have had a seizure and was unconscious somewhere in the village. Or maybe he had simply wandered far away and couldn't find his way back. In summary, they considered it a case of a search and rescue, ruling out the hypothesis of kidnapping. Rui Pedro's family was outraged by this approach to the case. Due to the extensive dissemination of Rui Pedro's images in the local media, a sex worker recognized his face and contacted the local police. She stated without hesitation that on March 4, 1998, a black car had stopped in front of her on a desolate road. The driver offered her $10 to have sex with the little boy who accompanied him. She asked how old the boy was, and the man replied that he was old enough. The woman took him behind some bushes by the side of the road and looked for a private place where no one could see them. There was no sexual contact. The little boy was very terrified, crying nonstop and repeating over and over again that he wanted to leave. Seeing the child in such a distraught state, the sex worker couldn't help but feel compassion for him. She spent around 15 minutes trying to comfort him. She hugged him tightly and assured him that everything would eventually be all right. Amidst his sobs, he confided in her that he had been forced to attend that meeting. After emerging from the bushes, the child got into the car, and that was the last time she saw him. All signs pointed to a kidnapping, but even with this compelling witness statement, the police still hesitated to fully embrace this theory. In a desperate plea, the family begged the authorities to act urgently, stressing that each passing moment could be critical to the child's survival. The following morning, just after the court's opening, they managed to persuade the public prosecutor's office to request the intervention of the judicial police, a specialized agency responsible for investigating serious crimes like homicides, kidnappings, organized crime, and terrorism. Within 24 hours of Rui Pedro's last sighting, several judicial police officers arrived in the town. In the subsequent days, alongside family members and neighbors, they meticulously combed through the entire region, suspecting that Rui Pedro might have been left somewhere. The distribution of posters featuring the child's photograph escalated, reaching a national level, and the entire country of Portugal was deeply shaken by the case. The disappearance of the child sparked an overwhelming sense of collective sorrow. People referred to Rui Pedro as our boy or our little Pedro. Simultaneously, the family began receiving a barrage of phone calls, many of which were tormenting and distressing. Some claimed to have Rui Pedro in their custody, while others provided leads to his whereabouts that ultimately led nowhere. The most audacious callers even demanded a ransom payment. One particular and terrifying call featured a child whose voice sounded eerily similar to Rui Pedro's. Amidst screams and tears, he desperately called out for his mother. Citing the challenge of tracing all communications, the police decided not to pursue any leads that came through phone calls. The family's desperation grew, and the omission of potentially valuable information for the ongoing investigation appeared both inept and negligent. In April 1998, 1 month after the disappearance, a suspicion emerged. A renowned Portuguese journalist traveled to Disneyland in Paris with his wife and children for a report intended to be published in a widely read magazine, with national circulation in Portugal. The article featured a series of portraits of him and his family at various park attractions. Among these images, one particular photograph raised alarm bells. In the background, a small child could be seen with a man dressed in red. Filomena and Manuel saw the photograph and firmly asserted that it was Rui Pedro. In September of the same year, a significant breakthrough occurred as the British police dismantled a pedophile network in an operation known as Operation Cathedral. This organization primarily operated online and served as a database with thousands of photos and videos depicting sexually abused children. This operation gained high-profile attention due to the unusually large amount of pornographic content possessed, produced, and distributed by this organization's members. Shockingly, they discovered more than 750,000 photos and 1,800 videos. Out of the 1,263 individuals featured in the seized material, only 17 were identified. 1 from Argentina, 1 from Chile, 1 from Portugal, 6 from the UK, and 7 from the United States. Filomena confirmed that Rui Pedro appeared in some of those photos, confirming that he was still alive, but nothing more. There were no coordinates or leads to his possible location. The British police speculated that members of the network had abused him on camera and then potentially harmed him. Over the next 13 years, the Public Ministry of Portugal built a case against Afonso, who consistently maintained his innocence. The trial began in November 2011. The key testimonies came from Rui Pedro's 3 friends, forming the backbone of the case. While the judge could verify certain facts presented by the prosecution, the court dismissed several testimonies due to a lack of conclusive evidence. In March 2012, Afonso was acquitted. On Rui Pedro's 27th birthday, January 28, 2014, a video was published that quickly went viral on social media. Some actors voluntarily participated in this video campaign. Their aim was to search for new clues about Rui Pedro's whereabouts, while also including the email addresses of the Northern Board of Judicial Police and the Portuguese Association for Missing Children to ensure that the young man's case would not fade into obscurity. This campaign had a broader goal of denouncing child trafficking for sexual exploitation. Returning to the legal proceedings, Afonso's freedom was short-lived. After an appeal by Rui Pedro's family in 2014, a new ruling from the Porto Court of Appeals sentenced him to 3 years in prison. This sentence was for inciting a minor to engage in involuntary sexual relations, but it was not related to the kidnapping or any other charges linked to the disappearance itself. Despite Afonso's defense attorney filing an appeal, this second ruling was confirmed by the Portuguese Supreme Court. On October 3, 2014, the resolution was ratified, and on March 18, 2015, Afonso was taken into custody after the police issued an arrest warrant. He was released on parole in March 2017, having served only 2/3 of his sentence. Afonso continued to maintain his innocence, claiming to be the victim of a grave injustice. 20 years after the disappearance in 2019, Rui Pedro was officially declared presumed dead. The police concluded their search as no further leads had emerged since Operation Cathedral, and the case had gone cold. The young man's whereabouts remain a painful mystery. Despite the ceaseless pain and the enduring void of not knowing what happened to her son, Filomena did not give up. In 2007, she founded the Association of Relatives of Missing Children. Rui Pedro's case highlighted a grave issue. We are confronted with a deeply serious phenomenon. Every year, 3 million children are kidnapped worldwide. In Portugal alone, there are over 60 missing children and minors. And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Crime Analysis Central. See you soon. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Natalia Melman. In the heart of Buenos Aires, Argentina, a vibrant soul named Natalia Melman came into the world on the 13th of March in the year 1986. She was the third child in a family of four, comprising 2 boys and 2 girls, born to the loving couple of Gustavo and Laura. Theirs was a comfortable middle-class household, sustained by the hard work of her parents. When young Natalia was just 6 years old, her parents made a life-altering decision. They decided to uproot their family and seek a new beginning in Miramar, affectionately known as the City of Children. The Melman family longed for a serene environment that would connect them with nature, shield them from the hustle and pollution of bustling cities, and enable them to build a harmonious life together. Their journey led them to Miramar on the 7th of November in 1992. Nestled on the Atlantic Ocean coast, Miramar enchanted with its picturesque landscapes and captivating beaches. Its population hovered around 35,000 residents, and the city's economy thrived during the vibrant summer tourist season. Agriculture and agro-industry played significant roles. As the year 2001 dawned, Natalia found herself immersed in her studies at high school. She was a brilliant student, consistently achieving top-notch grades. However, her commitment to academics did not hinder her sociability. Among her peers, she was celebrated for her infectious cheerfulness and outgoing nature. Such qualities led to her being chosen as the class representative, a testament to her popularity. Yet, like any typical young person, Natalia cherished her moments of leisure. She frequently embarked on adventures to various dance venues, where the rhythm of life blended with her youthful spirit. In the vibrant nightlife of Argentina, these venues are commonly referred to as boliches, and they often attract a young, enthusiastic crowd. Natalia, a bright and determined young woman, had a clear sense of how to balance her pursuit of fun without compromising her aspirations. She was deeply committed to her responsibilities and had her eyes set on a future that held a special place in her heart. A future in medicine, with a particular fascination for obstetrics, where she envisioned herself helping bring new life into the world. Natalia possessed a level of maturity and charisma that made her seem older than her years, endearing her to a wide circle of friends. Despite being in a relationship, she confided in her close friends about lingering feelings for her previous boyfriend, who had also moved on to a new romance. Her mother fondly remembered her as a passionate and loving young woman. On the evening of Saturday, February 3, 2001, just 1 month shy of her 15th birthday, Natalia found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Weary from overthinking and worrying, she decided to embark on a night out with 2 of her friends, seeking a temporary escape and a chance to clear her mind. Their night led them through several establishments, beginning with La Cantina, a bar situated just a stone's throw away from Miramar's picturesque pier. Later, they ventured to Amadeus, another bustling locale in Miramar, a short distance from their initial stop. As the early hours of Sunday, February 4, approached, Natalia unexpectedly crossed paths with her ex-boyfriend, Juan Maximiliano. She contemplated striking up a conversation, driven by a desire to rekindle their romance, but was disheartened to find him in the company of another girl named Diana. Faced with this disheartening scene, Natalia made the decision to leave the bar and head back home. Dawn was breaking, and Natalia had experienced a tumultuous night, characterized by moments of joy interspersed with spells of sadness. Her emotional state fluctuated from laughter to introspection in the blink of an eye. At around 7 in the morning on that fateful Sunday, February 4, Natalia bid her friends farewell, unaware of the harrowing ordeal awaiting her. As she walked away from the bar, a sense of vulnerability and solitude accompanied her, the residue of the night's mixed emotions. Unbeknownst to her, a man named Gustavo Fernandez, often referred to as El Gallo, had begun trailing her from a distance. Gustavo was a figure with a troubled history. In those early 2000s, at the age of 30, he carried a past marked by incarceration. In the pre-dawn hours of February 4, he had been present at one of the entertainment venues Natalia and her friends had visited. During this pivotal moment, a sinister plot had been set in motion. Gustavo, while enjoying himself at the bar, was approached by 3 officers from the Buenos Aires Province Police. These officers joined Gustavo, and together they concocted a disturbing plan. While Natalia had ventured several streets away from the bar, lost in her thoughts and weary from a night of dancing, an unexpected police patrol pulled up beside her. Gustavo, who had been surreptitiously tailing her, launched a shocking assault. A violent struggle ensued as he forcefully attempted to coerce Natalia into the patrol vehicle. Initially, he resorted to physical aggression, striking and pushing her. Despite her brave resistance, Natalia was overpowered by the sheer strength of her assailant. In a harried and alarming manner, Gustavo succeeded in placing her inside the trunk of the vehicle. Remarkably, Gustavo then continued to walk away nonchalantly, as if nothing untoward had occurred. Meanwhile, the 3 police officers sped off with Natalia towards the outskirts of the city. Their destination was a rustic cabin in an area devoid of basic amenities like water and electricity. It was a remote and desolate location chosen as part of their sinister plan. Back at the Melman family's home, the arrival of the morning on Sunday, February 4, initially seemed like any other day but swiftly transformed into a day of anguish. Laura, Natalia's mother, sensed that something was amiss when her daughter failed to return home for the night. Natalia had always been diligent about communicating her plans and whereabouts, making her absence deeply unsettling. Laura contacted Gustavo, Natalia's father, and together they embarked on a mission to visit Natalia's friends' homes to gather information. Filled with a lot of doubts and growing concern, they engaged in conversations with Natalia's friends. It was during these conversations that they pieced together the events of the previous night, including Natalia's movements before leaving the bar. Upon learning about the places Natalia had visited and the events leading up to her departure from the bar, Laura and Gustavo initiated a search. They checked local hospitals, beaches, and various locations throughout Miramar, desperately searching for any sign of their daughter. However, their efforts yielded no results, and as night descended, they were left utterly distraught and without any clues regarding Natalia's whereabouts. In their mounting despair, Natalia's parents made the heart-wrenching decision to report her as missing. When they reached out to the authorities, the officers they encountered classified the incident as a case of a runaway from home rather than a disappearance. This unusual turn of events marked the beginning of a series of suspicions and irregularities that would soon unfold. Gustavo and Laura couldn't bear to think in the worst possibilities, but the unnerving silence from Natalia confirmed that she was being prevented from reaching out to them. Natalia's disappearance was far from a voluntary act on her part. The initial response from the police raised eyebrows due to their apparent lack of urgency in the case. By February 5th, local media outlets had started featuring Natalia's face, and soon, national media joined the coverage, all reporting on the young girl's disappearance. As Natalia's family and friends tirelessly sought answers, witnesses gradually emerged, confirming they had seen Natalia leaving the bar, with Gustavo following her as she moved away. Simultaneously, in a show of support for the family and concern for Natalia's welfare, the Miramar municipality provided Laura and Gustavo with an office space. At that point, they lacked even a telephone to gather information about their daughter. This space became a hub for people to share leads and provide crucial details regarding the case. Laura and Gustavo were determined to uncover the truth surrounding their daughter's disappearance. The office's glass front was covered with posters bearing Natalia's face, serving a dual purpose: to keep their daughter's image at the forefront of everyone's minds and to ensure the confidentiality of those coming forward with information. In the days following Natalia's disappearance, extensive search efforts spanned various areas of Miramar and even extended to Mar del Sur, a locality approximately 20 kilometers away, based on reports of Natalia being seen in the area. The police conducted various operations, interviewed potential witnesses, and established traffic checkpoints, but regrettably, these efforts bore no fruit. Simultaneously, rumors began to circulate, suggesting possible police involvement in Natalia's disappearance. The police investigations extended to another coastal area in the Buenos Aires province, as suspicions grew around certain police officers' roles in the case. Gustavo, initially a witness, gradually faded from his usual places of visit, eventually disappearing entirely. This development frustrated the Miramar community and deeply distressed Natalia's parents. They felt betrayed and couldn't comprehend how the prime suspect in their daughter's disappearance had managed to escape scrutiny. Days turned into weeks, and the official authorities remained tight-lipped, prompting the community to express their dissatisfaction. A series of protests erupted, demanding answers regarding Natalia's case. These demonstrations, attended by both locals and thousands of tourists, consistently called for Natalia's safe return, with around 8,000 people marching each night, vowing to stay on the streets until she was found. On February 8, 2001, a young woman was exploring the iconic sand dunes area of Miramar. While traversing the terrain, she made a grim discovery: the lifeless body of a girl, just 800 meters from where police had been conducting search operations. The girl's remains were in an advanced state of decomposition and partially covered by clothing. Visible signs of abuse and indications of forced intimacy were evident. A cord was found around her neck, suggesting strangulation. While it was presumed to be Natalia, local forensic authorities had to confirm her identity. Gustavo, Natalia's father, had been away, seeking tracking dogs to aid in the search for his daughter. He learned of the discovery through television news, and the shock and grief were nearly unbearable. Meanwhile, a local resident reported his attempts to search the area near the discovery but was thwarted by the police. His suspicions of police misconduct deepened when he realized that the body had been found near the location where officers had barred his return to the area. The discovery of Natalia's body ignited public fury in Miramar, exacerbated by suspicions of police involvement. This anger escalated into violence, resulting in significant damage to the police station. The case's prominence compelled government authorities, including Minister of Security and the President of Argentina, to remove the initial lead investigator in Natalia's case from his duties. As more details emerged, it was revealed that Natalia's body had been found lying face up, bearing signs of severe brutality, including burns on various body parts and evidence of forced encounters with multiple individuals. Forensic analysis revealed genetic material from 5 different men, and her resistance was evident beneath her fingernails, indicating a fierce struggle. Authorities confirmed that Natalia had been held captive for several hours and that her pleas for release had been ignored. Following her death, it was presumed that her body had been kept in the same house where the events occurred for 4 days before being transported to the dunes, where it was ultimately discovered. Given the irregular conditions of the case and the alleged police cover-up reported by the family, it wasn't until September 2002 that the trial took place. 3 out of the 5 murder suspects, the police officers Ricardo Suarez, Oscar Echenique, and Ricardo Anselmini, were brought to trial, along with a 4th individual, Gustavo Fernandez, who was identified as the one responsible for handing Natalia over. In mid-October of the same year, The Second Criminal Oral Court of Mar del Plata established the guilt of the 3 individuals through skin, saliva, and pubic hair samples. Additionally, traces of soil found on Natalia's shoe were deemed consistent with the soil from the remote house, serving as evidence in the trial. The court sentenced the police officers Oscar Echenique, Ricardo Anselmini, and Ricardo Suarez to life imprisonment with additional penalties, considering them co-authors of the crimes of aggravated illegal deprivation of liberty, aggravated sexual abuse, and triple qualified homicide with cruelty, treachery, and in collusion with 2 or more persons. Gustavo El Gallo Fernandez was also sentenced to 25 years in prison. There was a law in effect during the time of Natalia's kidnapping and murder that led to further reductions in the sentences of those responsible for the teenager's homicide. They once again sought the benefits of temporary releases, and remarkably, their requests were granted once more, every 15 days, twice a month, and for 12 hours each time. Ricardo and Oscar could leave prison and return to their homes. During one of these instances when he was free, Ricardo unexpectedly encountered Laura in a supermarket. Overwhelmed by anger, she shouted at him repeatedly, labeling him a murderer, but he simply responded with a smile. This incident shed light on the fact that the oversight of the measure granted to the former police officers was inadequate. The permission was intended for them to go to their residences, not to freely roam the city as if they had no pending legal matters. These glaring irregularities provided a strong argument for revoking their benefits. However, due to the difficulty in placing trust in the local courts, Gustavo, Natalia's father, resorted to a hunger strike in front of the Palace of Justice in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. This act of protest yielded results. In a case marred by irregularities, Gustavo managed to have his sentence reduced to 10 years. He was released in 2009, even though he was accused of another murder in Miramar. In June 2018, the trial of Ricardo, an active duty police officer with over 20 years of service, commenced. This officer had been under investigation since 2002, as he had been partially identified from the DNA samples taken during the investigations. However, he was later acquitted. He faced charges as a co-perpetrator of deprivation of liberty and legitimate freedom, along with the use of violence, aggravated sexual abuse with penetration, in collaboration with 2 or more individuals, and double aggravated homicide, committed to ensure the impunity of the co-perpetrators of a previous crime. He declared his innocence, despite the fact that the pubic hair found on Natalia's body matched his DNA by 97%. Tragically, not only was he acquitted, but he was also not expelled from the police force. The judges concluded that the accusation could not be substantiated. However, the verdict faced appeals from the prosecution and Natalia's family's legal representative. On November 13, 2019, the Buenos Aires Court of Appeals nullified that acquittal and ordered a new trial. In the meantime, the criminal defense attorney of 2 former police officers who were incarcerated declared to the media in early 2023. She asserted that her clients, Oscar and Ricardo Alfredo, meet the eligibility criteria for parole. During a hearing at the Mar del Plata Court of Appeals, she formally requested their early release. She also emphasized that the prison service reports have been favorable, highlighting that her clients have maintained impeccable behavior, with no records of infractions throughout their incarceration. From her perspective, they have already served the requisite time as mandated by the law. Once again, the parents of Natalia, ever watchful, attended the hearing and voiced their plea against the early release of the 2 former police officers convicted for their daughter's tragic fate. Fast forward to mid-May 2023, Ricardo, one of the police officers, aged 65, received a life sentence for his involvement in the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of Natalia Melman. Following the court's verdict, Laura expressed that the quest for justice continues, awaiting the identification and prosecution of the 5th individual involved. She made it resoundingly clear that her maternal determination knows no bounds and that the fight for justice will persist until all those responsible for Natalia's untimely demise are held accountable. The Natalia Melman case underscores the paramount importance of a trustworthy and impartial justice system where individuals responsible for criminal acts, regardless of their background, face the legal consequences commensurate with their actions. The unwavering dedication of Natalia's parents played a pivotal role in ensuring that justice ultimately prevailed, preventing corruption and a lack of transparency within certain law enforcement circles from obstructing the pursuit of truth and accountability. Natalia's mother has reiterated again and again, "Our battles do not waver. While we cannot bring our daughter back to life, we must relentlessly pursue the fifth individual involved. It is through collective strength that we continue our pursuit of justice." And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Agostina Halibert. Agostina Halibert was born on March 23, 1991, in the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina. She belonged to a well-known family and was the eldest of three daughters of the couple Carolina and Edgardo Halibert, who served as the Secretary of Health of their city. Her uncle, Herman Halibert, held the position of tourism minister and was a pre-candidate for deputy in the Rio Negro region. Consequently, the Halibert family was widely recognized in their province and other regions of Argentina. Those who knew Agostina since her childhood consistently praised her outstanding qualities. She was described as a sensitive, sincere, and loving child who had a passion for dogs and excelled in design, crafts, and decoration. Helen, who shared her adolescence with Agostina, observed her creative talent from a very young age. Helen recalled that when they were in school together, each class was assigned a theme, and Agostina always took the lead in decorating the classroom entrance with her impressive drawings and giant models. While her classmates were cutting and pasting, they followed Agostina's lead because they knew she was steps ahead, creating incredible models. Agostina also had a strong interest in fashion. She even designed the graduation sweaters for her high school class. Those close to her affectionately called her Agos and described her as sociable and an excellent hostess. She loved dressing up, and during her teenage years, her friends often gathered in the garage of her house for pre-dance parties. She would try to introduce her different groups of friends to each other, always striving to connect people. Agostina enjoyed baking and cooking, and she was skilled at it. She had a keen sense of taste and excelled in many things. She had a curious nature, and when something piqued her interest, she pursued it. After completing her secondary education, she initially enrolled in architecture, but later abandoned it. During that time, she focused her energy on fashion design and studied it for a while, but she ultimately changed her direction. Nevertheless, she was a successful young woman who used her knowledge to chase her dreams. She even started her own clothing brand, worked as a model, and was building her career. At some point in her adult life, Agostina's path crossed with Juan Manuel Reverter, with whom she began a relationship that seemed to be going well. Little is known about Juan Manuel's life, and even the names of his parents have not been disclosed. Only a text from an acquaintance referred to them as Moni and Mauricio, and other family details remain unknown. The only accessible information about Juan Manuel is his LinkedIn profile, where he is promoted as a software engineer, a graduate of the National Technological University in Argentina, although his listed place of residence was Toronto and its surroundings in Canada. Interestingly, a search in the university did not reveal him as a graduate. Instead, a resolution from the university's Superior Council in 2017 stated that he had not passed 2 subjects during the periods of 2008 and 2009, which led to him losing his status as a regular student in the field of information systems engineering. Agustina and Juan Manuel's relationship began during the pandemic and was characterized by ups and downs. According to some of her family members, he exhibited psychological violence towards her and was controlling. However, the situation escalated in the summer of 2021, marked by more serious conflicts and violence perpetrated by Juan Manuel against Agustina. Her father shared that she was deeply affected by the relationship, but with the support of her family, she rebuilt her life and had no contact with him for a whole year. Around September 2022, Agustina decided to move to Mexico, specifically to the picturesque beach town of Playa del Carmen in the Riviera Maya, to further her modeling career. She rented an apartment, leaving behind her comfort zone in her native Argentina and putting a considerable distance between herself and Juan Manuel. In Mexico, Agustina lived by doing advertising appearances as a hostess and engaging in modeling activities. She aspired to travel the world while pursuing her modeling career. She loved Playa del Carmen and was genuinely happy there. She found work quickly and was thriving. She had many friendships and the support of a childhood friend who was also living in the area, so Agustina was not alone. Furthermore, she brought her dog with her for emotional support. Agustina's passion for travel was evident in her social media posts. Brazil, New Zealand, China, and European capitals like Madrid, Paris, London, and Brussels were some of the destinations that Agustina had the pleasure of visiting and sharing with her 16,000 followers on Instagram. One of her future plans was to move to Europe. Candela, Agustina's 21-year-old sister, had come to spend the summer in Playa del Carmen. She wanted to enjoy the beautiful Mexican beach area and be close to her older sister. The two decided to share the apartment where Agustina lived because it had 2 rooms, and they would be comfortable. At the end of December, Agustina's ex-boyfriend, Juan Manuel, reappeared. He came to visit her for the holidays. They reconciled, and he stayed to live with both girls. Candela would never have chosen to share an apartment with her sister's boyfriend, but things happened so quickly that before she realized it, the man was settled in Agustina's room. In her recent conversations with her family, Agustina admitted that they had decided to rekindle their relationship and announced that they planned to move to Spain. However, the peace in their relationship was always short-lived. On Thursday, February 16, there was a major argument because Agustina had discovered infidelity. The atmosphere in the apartment was extremely tense. On the afternoon of Friday, February 17, 2023, Candela left her sister alone with Juan Manuel. When she returned the next day at 7 in the morning, she tried to enter her sister's apartment, but the door was locked. She asked the building's doorman if there was any way to enter, and he informed her that screams and a fight had been heard in that apartment during the night. The police had been called twice due to the neighbors' complaints. Candela went back to the apartment and insisted on trying to get in. She entered the access code, but it didn't work. The door was locked from the inside, so she had to knock. After persisting several times, her sister's boyfriend finally got up and opened the door. Almost immediately, Juan Manuel asked Candela where Agustina was, and she criticized him, saying how could she know where her sister was if she had left the previous evening, leaving the couple alone. She insisted that he should know where Agustina was, but he replied that she was sleeping. While they argued, Agustina's small dog began barking, and Candela followed the sound to the bathroom of the apartment. There, she found Agustina with a bathrobe belt around her neck, tied to a hand towel holder that was only 4 feet high. Agostina's sister and her boyfriend untied her and brought her to the living room, where they attempted CPR, but Agostina was already dead. Candela then called the police, and the forensic experts examined the scene and took the body to the morgue, where an autopsy was performed, and she was immediately cremated. The case was initially classified as suicide, and it was considered closed. However, despite the decision of the Mexican justice system, the Halibert family suspected that Agostina's death was actually a murder committed by her boyfriend, and they had their reasons. In late February, Edgardo sent a letter to the Foreign Ministry. The letter that reached the office of the Minister of Foreign Affairs requested action from the competent authorities in Mexico and explained that the family had experienced a situation of helplessness regarding their daughter's death. He detailed that the judicial procedure was riddled with shortcomings because none of the basic protocols were applied to investigate the real causes of her death. The boyfriend was not detained, his phone was not confiscated, and no toxicological tests were conducted, nor were any injuries checked. In addition to all this, the family had no access to the case. Despite efforts by the Argentine consul to obtain copies of the proceedings, he was unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Edgardo recalled that the Foreign Ministry had an obligation to investigate and punish violence against women and to guarantee the family's right to clarification regarding the circumstances surrounding Agostina's death. Regarding this ongoing case, the Foreign Ministry's action is of utmost importance because, given the conditions of the investigation in Mexico, Juan Manuel is free to act. Since Agostina's death was classified as suicide, her partner's legal situation is not compromised at the moment, which is why he is not considered a fugitive, but a person of interest for the family. However, it is essential to bear in mind that both Agostina and Juan Manuel are Argentine citizens, and the Foreign Ministry must ensure the rights of both individuals, even if it is proven that the man committed the crime of which the family of the deceased influencer accuses him. On her part, Carolina, Agostina's mother, embarked on a crusade in the media to seek justice and put pressure on Mexican investigators. She denounced the violent relationship between the victim and her partner. Carolina asserted that her daughter was killed by her boyfriend, and she mentioned in a televised interview that her daughter had been tortured, burned, abused, and beaten, including blows to the head, all prior to her death. She was convinced that he had staged the supposed hanging from a towel rack. Agostina was a tall girl, and she was dressed and ready to go out when Candela found her. According to Carolina, nobody who is contemplating suicide takes the time to get dressed up. She recalled that Juan Manuel had a history of violence. During a press conference shared on social media, it was revealed that the couple had been dealing with ongoing issues that had been kept a secret. She mentioned that the man had never inspired trust, and 2 years earlier, they had rescued Agostina from the apartment she shared with Juan Manuel after a physical assault on her part. She stated that if they hadn't gone to rescue her that day, her daughter would have lost her life at that moment. After that violent incident, Agostina chose not to report it, and her parents decided to respect her decision, although they believed it was best not to let such incidents go unreported to the authorities. The consequences of not taking action at that time were felt 2 years later in Mexico. According to her mother's account, on Friday, February 17, Agostina sent a message at 2:30 p.m., saying that she felt ugly and believed that she did not deserve a man who would hurt her. Carolina provided support from afar and encouraged her to leave the apartment. She reminded her that there was no need to be with that man. She advised her to kick him out of the house and not even get upset about a person who wasn't worth it. In her opinion, her daughter, by returning to that violent man, had played a risky card, and it ended badly, to her regret. The model's uncle, Herman, stated that Juan Manuel's parents had contacted the family and promised to cooperate. However, the dialogue ended when the man did not show up for a Zoom meeting where he was supposed to share his version of the events. Regarding this absence, Carolina said that he had remained in hiding but was likely listening and watching everything to stay informed about the case. In her view, He would have given his version if he had nothing to hide. Angry and frustrated, she said that Juan Manuel's parents were responsible for covering up what she considered a monster. On March 8, International Women's Day, there were marches in Mexico and Argentina, demanding justice for Agustina. This increased pressure on the Mexican prosecutor's office, which announced that it would investigate the death of the Argentine model as a possible femicide. This decision was based on the autopsy report, which showed signs of head and facial injuries, multiple lacerations on the body, and bruises consistent with sexual abuse. A forensic expert hired by the Halibert family analyzed the official report and pointed out various signs of violence, such as punch marks on the mouth and a significant head injury. Additionally, the forensic expert noted lacerations in several parts of the body and internal and external hematomas, suggesting recent and non-consensual sexual activity. However, the only available evidence is this forensic report because, as mentioned earlier, the Mexican authorities proceeded to cremate Agustina's body shortly after classifying the case as suicide. Following the mobilizations on International Women's Day, the Mexican justice system announced that it had reclassified the case, originally labeled as suicide, and had begun investigating it as a possible femicide. The family's lawyer stated that the case had been referred to a special unit equipped to handle such cases. She further accused the main suspect, Juan Manuel, of attempting to stage a suicide and highlighted signs of violence at the scene. The apartment was locked from the inside. There were visible injuries on both the victim and her partner. A table leg was found out of place and on the floor, and 2 calls had been made to the police the previous night. She also criticized the judicial investigation, revealing that the crime scene had not been properly secured, contrary to protocol. It was essential for the scene and the victim's body to be preserved until the investigation concluded. She added that due to numerous errors, information that could have been obtained from the devices was lost since the perpetrator took the cell phones and all the data with him. The investigation into Agustina's violent death in Mexico promises to be a challenging journey for the family, which has been following the case from Argentina, more than 7,000 kilometers away, with a different legal system and culture. New statements were made by the prosecutor of the state of Quintana Roo on March 13, 2023, asserting that the Argentine model and influencer had taken her own life punishment, and scientifically. These declarations were made during a press conference held by the security cabinet of that Mexican province. The prosecutor detailed that there was a history of violence both before and during her relationship with her partner. He stated that it could not be ruled out that Juan Manuel might have induced her to take her own life, and that could be a matter of investigation. When questioned by journalists about the cigarette burns on the woman's body, he assured that these injuries occurred before her suicide. He explained that there had been violence the night before her death between her and her partner, and there was sufficient evidence of this. Regarding Juan Manuel, the prosecutor stated that he had been interviewed by the investigative police, and at that time, they did not have enough evidence for an arrest or any other legal action against him. However, this did not mean that he would not be pursued later if a connection to Agustina's death could be established. Edgardo, Agustina's father, insisted on the need to change the classification of the case, as their lawyer had found numerous pieces of evidence to classify it as femicide. When asked by an Argentine media about the prosecutor's statements, Herman, the victim's uncle, expressed that they were not surprised that the Attorney General was defending the suicide theory, because acknowledging that there were many elements suggesting femicide would mean admitting their failures. He believed that the prosecution had acted clumsily and hastily in the early stages of the investigation, leading to the loss of crucial evidence. However, as the case was transferred to the specialized unit, it indicated that something had gone wrong, as it is not common to replace a team that had performed well. He argued that the prosecutor was trying to defend the initial theory because going in a different direction would be an acknowledgement of their poor work. Gerardo Reynoso, a journalist, provided details of the judicial process. He explained that the Prosecutor General's office reclassified the death as femicide due to pressure from Agostina's family, the lawyer, and a feminist march on March 8th. However, in the subsequent hours, the justice system announced that they were still considering the suicide theory. He highlighted that, in general, the prosecutor's office did not want to validate the independent expert opinion that it found injuries compatible with femicide. Recognizing this would mean accepting that someone outside the prosecutor's office had solved a problem they should have handled with a properly executed expert analysis. Regarding Juan Manuel's situation, he pointed out that the prosecutor's office would have to call the boyfriend to discuss the case. In the event of her suicide, he would inevitably be part of the investigation, at least in the statements that should have been taken to determine what had happened. To make matters worse, the journalist emphasized that the crime was discovered on a weekend, and during weekends in Mexico, intern trainees and junior investigators typically handle duties. This could have been the reason why everything was mishandled. He believed that their actions were not malicious, but rather due to a lack of experience, and this was reflected in how the case was handled. Some days later, in Argentina, news surfaced about a call received by Agostina's father. A couple of days after the Women's Day March, a prosecutor from Quintana Roo contacted Edgardo by telephone on the instruction of the state prosecutor office, who wanted to speak with the family. Before hearing from the father, the person on the phone, speaking on behalf of others whose identities were unclear, stated that the system wanted to apologize for what had happened. They emphasize that if Agostina's boyfriend bore any responsibility, they would certainly prosecute, as there was no intention within the prosecutor's office to cover up anything. They added that if any public servant from the prosecutor's office was found responsible, measures would be taken. He also quickly clarified that he would organize a meeting with the general prosecutor and a team of experts to show the father what they had. He stated that the general prosecutor had instructed that other state agencies in Mexico should also review the autopsy. Then the prosecutor, who had been speaking gently, abruptly shifted his tone and raised a complaint. He mentioned that it had been claimed that they did not follow the femicide protocol, and he argued that every death of a woman was worked on according to the femicide protocol. Edgardo also dropped the formality and transitioned from being a grieving father to one demanding justice for Agostina. After asking the prosecutor for his name, he directly addressed him as Carlos and firmly presented his point of view on the matter. He told him that if supposed experts found a young girl deceased in the situation she was in, hanging with a man inside the residence, and they didn't detain that man, didn't take his statement, and didn't seize his phone, then the investigation left much to be desired. He added that after reviewing the autopsy and witnessing what his daughter had endured, the conclusion for him was that everything had failed, a 100% failure, because his daughter had died. The latest information came at the end of March, just days before the 1-month anniversary of Agostina's death. The hypotheses of suicide and femicide are still being pursued on separate tracks. Helabert's lawyer said that the case had been transferred to the Women's Crimes Division, meaning Agostina's case is now on the femicide and gender violence table. She continued to work with the prosecutor handling the case and focused solely on demonstrating the femicide angle, providing more evidence, and investigating the boyfriend's involvement. She apologized for not being able to provide more details, but explained that all leads related to the murder were under seal. Regarding the question of when Juan Manuel could be arrested, the lawyer stated that it would depend on the conclusion of the investigation and that it was up to the prosecutor to determine if sufficient evidence had been provided or if more was needed. However, she reiterated her confidence in being able to prove everything. Neighbors reported hearing screams until around 2:30 in the morning. According to statements obtained after that time, silence prevailed at the scene. The time of death listed in the incomplete autopsy report is 4 a.m. While Agostina's family continues to demand justice, the alleged perpetrator is in an unknown location. Although the Mexican justice system has not issued an arrest warrant against him, and no judicial proceedings have been opened in Argentina because the alleged crime occurred in another country, he remains free. However, he has not made himself visible and has not faced the family of the girlfriend he supposedly loved and lived with until the day of her death. This case is still in development, but due to its preliminary stage, many proceedings are conducted discreetly and away from the media. The prosecutor's office investigating the alleged femicide issued a document to determine Reverter's whereabouts. The order was issued on June 7th by the Specialized Prosecutor's Office for the Investigation and Prosecution of Femicide to search for, locate, and request Reverter's presentation without depriving him of his freedom. As stated, the goal is to expand their interview to gather more information and comply with this authority's request. Well, that's all for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, hit the like button and share this video. It will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another Unreal True Crime. The case of Rachel Marie Runyon. The story of Rachel Marie Runyon began on June 23, 1979, when she was born in the serene landscapes of Weber County, Utah, United States. She was the only girl in the family of Jeff and Elaine Runyon. The couple's firstborn was named Justin, and the youngest child was Nathan. The three siblings lived in harmony, promising laughter and shared memories. According to reviews of her life in 1981, Rachel, with her innate grace, the 2-year-old girl, ascended to the realm of childhood royalty by being crowned Little Miss Sunset. With her golden hair and radiant smile, she captivated attention at every local event. But little Rachel not only had physical beauty, her inner nobility was much greater, according to her mother Elaine. She was a gentle and kind girl who was often seen on the periphery of playgrounds. She was extremely observant and analytical, and knew how to stay away from the rough games between Justin and the other boys. She had the habit of sucking her thumb while observing the mischief of others. That gave her an even sweeter and also funny appearance, which aroused much sympathy. Her mother occasionally teased her about her future, predicting that she would have rabbit or beaver teeth, to which Rachel responded with a naughty giggle. The Runyon family chose to settle in Sunset, a community only about 6,000 inhabitants back then, which seemed a safe paradise to raise their children. Their modest home was located near the Doxey Elementary School playground. For the three little Runyons, that park became their place of laughter and fun. Trusting that they were doing their best for their children, Jeff and Elaine decided to install a gate in the fence of their own yard, opening a direct passage to the favorite place site of the three children. Despite the apparent tranquility of Sunset, Jeff and Elaine were always vigilant, tirelessly warning their children about the risks of trusting strangers. They insisted on the importance of staying in safe places and, above all, taught them never to follow someone unknown, no matter what they offered. Their commitment to their children's safety was unquestionable. In the late morning of August 26, 1982, 3-year-old Rachel, her brother Nathan, and the eldest 5-year-old Justin asked their mother for a simple request. They wanted her permission to go to the playground of Doxey Elementary School, less than 5 meters from their home. Although Elaine had always been cautious about letting her children play without her supervision, the proximity of the playground and the need to finish preparing lunch led her to agree to the request. As no precautions seemed excessive to her, the mother watched them from the kitchen window while preparing food. However, when lunchtime came around at approximately 12:55 p.m., only Nathan and Justin returned home. The voice of little Justin trembled as he told his mother what had happened moments before. He described how a young man had forcibly taken Rachel from the park. The man first attempted to lure all three children, promising ice creams and chewing gums from a nearby store. While playing in the open air, the man approached them, trying to persuade them to get into his car, claiming to have the gum-flavored ice cream they longed for. In hell innocence, Rachel mentioned her favorite ice cream flavor, and Justin, acting as the protective older brother, warned his sister not to pay attention to the stranger's offer. Then Rachel started to walk away, but the man was quicker, roughly grabbing and carrying her over his shoulder, silencing her screams as he took her to his vehicle. Justin and Nathan, paralyzed by fear, hadn't fully recovered when their mother called them to eat. Instantly, Elaine found herself in the midst of her worst nightmare. With her heart racing, she hurried to the store the man mentioned, questioning employees and shoppers with heartbreaking urgency. However, her inquiries yielded no results. No one remembered seeing Rachel or the man. 20 minutes after Rachel's disappearance, Elaine was at the Sunset Police Department, sporting the kidnapping. With immense distress, Elaine barely managed to speak, and the search for answers became a painful and uncertain journey. The Sunset Police acted promptly, initiating a plan involving vehicle checks around the city. Despite their efforts, the suspect was not apprehended, nor was Rachel recovered. With time pressing, a special team of 10 investigators from various law enforcement agencies in Utah gathered under the direction of Sheriff Brant Johnston, intending to solve the child's mysterious abduction. Descriptions provided by Justin and another 10-year-old child at the park gave investigators critical details. They described a light-skinned African-American man, around 30 to 35 years old, with distinctive afro hair and a marked mustache. He drove an old dark blue four-door vehicle, embellished with wooden strips on the sides. This man had been seen in the park, interacting with various children and having a cup of coffee for at least 15 minutes before taking Rachel against her will. His strategy was to avoid immediate alarm and prevent children from screaming in his presence by engaging them in playful activities. The children's sharp memories allowed the police to create a detailed composite sketch. However, the three children were the only direct witnesses, as no security camera have recorded the incident in the school playground. Despite persistent calls by police and the media, no one reported seeing a man with those characteristics. Subsequent efforts by the law enforcement agencies involved forensic analysis and rigorous door-to-door investigations, supported by a committee of neighbors, many of whom offered monetary contributions for an improvised search. The Runyon family embarked on a heartbreaking journey to find their beloved daughter. With limited resources but unwavering will, both the family and the community volunteers launched various methods to find Rachel. A national flyer campaign displaying the girl's image was meticulously orchestrated, and friends and neighbors joined in a race against time, calming local neighborhoods in a frantic search. The case of Rachel Runyon saw thousands of missing person posters disseminated to raise public awareness regarding her disappearance. The public's response was overwhelming, providing investigators with myriad clues about Rachel's possible location and the potential identity of the abductor. Despite the determination in pursuing every lead, the outcomes were predominantly disheartening. A week after the harrowing disappearance, Rachel's parents, Jeff and Elaine, traveled to New York to attend a press conference with the intent to sustain media attention and emphasize the urgency of their daughter's return. Jeff, in a courageous plea, conveyed the profound damage the abductor had inflicted on their daughter and themselves, urging anyone with information to come forward. Elaine, with visible anguish, suggested the possibility of Rachel being sold after her abduction, and she appealed to potential adoptive parents to ensure they were not adopting her missing daughter. The family's relentless dedication was soon met with a harsh reality of mounting financial costs, reaching $10,000 in postage expenses alone within 3 weeks. The long-term sustainability of such immense physical, emotional, and financial exertion was seemingly impossible. On September 3rd, the distressed parents brought their appeals to the Today Show, offering a reward of $20,000, primarily sourced from community donations, aiming to gather more information on Rachel's whereabouts. The community of Sunset demonstrated immense solidarity, contributing an additional $20,000 to the reward, totaling $40,000, a substantial incentive for Rachel's safe return at that time. The unexpected discovery on September 19, 1982, obliterated the enduring hopes of those searching for Rachel and left her loved one's heart broken. A family traveling in Mountain Green, Utah, discovered the partially covered body of a small girl, later identified as Rachel, despite the advanced decomposition. The mystery surrounding her death persisted, as the exact cause remained undetermined, with asphyxiation not ruled out. Following the painful confirmation of Rachel's fate, Jeff and Elaine organized a proper farewell, attended by over 300 people. Rachel was finally laid to rest at the Washington Heights Memorial Park in Ogden, Utah. In the midst of devastation, Elaine transformed her pain into efficacy for child safety and legal improvements for child abduction cases, fostering awareness and change in a world that had brought her immeasurable sorrow. With her heart shattered but resolve unbroken, Elaine became a steadfast support, offering counsel, guidance, and solace to other parents plunged into the turmoil of their children's disappearances. As accounts of this case highlight, Rachel's legacy surpassed her individual tragedy. Her kidnapping and the horrifying manner of her death echoed through the halls of power, serving as catalysts for substantial change. In October 1982, legislation was enacted at the federal level, granting parents of missing children access to an information exchange hub managed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. This hub began accumulating and archiving fingerprint and blood-type records of over 300,000 children from Utah, aiming to forge an indispensable resource in combating child abductions. It may seem grim to assert that the agonizing loss of Rachel to an unapprehended abductor wasn't futile, but that is indeed the case. The state of Utah introduced the Rachel Alert System in April 2002. Intended to notify residents about active child abduction and missing children cases, this system emerged as a ray of hope. It was only initiated when rigorous criteria were fulfilled, such as the child being a minor or mentally disabled, immediate danger, and not running away voluntarily. Detailed physical descriptions of the child were also mandatory. The Rachel Alert was activated only twice, during the disappearance of Elizabeth Smart in June 2002 and the kidnapping of Nicholas Triplett, a 3-month-old, in January 2003. Both children were eventually recovered alive. After Elizabeth Smart's safe return, realizing the efficacy of such alert systems, 41 states adopted the Amber Alert System, named for another girl, Amber Haderman. In April 2003, Utah transitioned from the Rachel Alert to the Amber Alert System to comply with national standards. However, this didn't signify that the 3-year-old would be forgotten. To honor her memory, the Attorney General's office instituted the Rachel Runyon Award for citizens who aid in recovering a child by contacting the law enforcement when an alert is issued. Elaine was also invited to participate in the award ceremonies. Currently, the Amber Alert System undergoes testing twice a year in Utah on January 13 and August 26, the dates marking the anniversary of Rachel's abduction. Although Rachel's murderer remains of large in the case unsolved, Lieutenant Phil instead's vow that it will not be forgotten persists. Phil, the first to respond to Elaine's urgent call following her daughter's abduction, has continually supported the Runyon family. Over the years, he repeatedly reassured them of Sunset Police Department's unwavering commitment to find the individual responsible for Rachel's abduction and subsequent tragic death. In 2007, the case was officially reopened, and the police have been collaborating closely with the Utah Attorney General's office in their quest to apprehend and bring the perpetrator to justice. At the time, a $58,000 reward was offered to anyone delivering information, leading to the arrest and conviction of the perpetrator. With the reward seemingly not alluring enough to elicit crucial information, hopes of identifying the perpetrator are heavily dependent on substantial advancements in forensic technology since 1982. Strategies like the potential exhumation of Rachel's body to collect more evidence were also considered. In 2007, DNA testing on items found near the location of the remains provided initial results, but didn't significantly advance the investigation. Regardless of the hurdles and uncertainties, the Runyon family maintains hope that justice will eventually be served. The scope of suspects has varied over the years. In 2012, it was disclosed that focus was on an inmate in a Pennsylvania prison, a former resident of Sunset in 1982. While no formal charges were levied against him, he was deemed a person of interest in relation to the little girl's kidnapping and homicide. Another potential suspect is a man with a criminal background located in New Mexico. Chief Ken Aborn of Sunset Police has noted that evidence does point toward this individual's possible guilt, but it's currently inadequate for a formal arrest. Despite the obstacles, the quest for justice for Rachel is ongoing, and the resolve of her family and the authorities remains unyielding. In May 2016, the park, a silent witness to her abduction, was renamed Rachel Runyon Memorial Park. On August 26, during a ceremony filled with emotion, it became a tangible tribute to the little girl's memory. Her commemorative stone, bearing her image and a brief recount of her story, stands within the park's boundaries, the engraving on the stone commemorating her short-lived life. This was not the only significant act in Rachel's memory. In March 2017, Rachel Runyon's Missing and Exploited Children's Day became law in Utah, aiming to emphasize child safety in the community annually, inspired by Rachel's story. In 2019, there was renewed hope in Rachel's case when private investigator Jason Jensen began working with the Runyon family. Jensen, co-founder of Utah's Cold Case Coalition, focused on a different crime from the 1970s. Witnesses in this unrelated case had provided incorrect information about the suspect's appearance, leading Jason to reconsider the descriptions given in Rachel's case. Specifically, he pondered if Justin, Rachel's brother, could have misinterpreted the racial identity of the abductor due to his young age and the predominantly white neighborhood they lived in, where interactions with African Americans were limited. Jason discussed with Elaine the possibility that Rachel's brother might have observed a Latino man abducting his sister. Justin never associated the abductor with being African American. He remembered him having a dark complexion and a distinct mustache with a gap or separation in the middle. The authorities, however, had prioritized the description provided by another older child present at the park that day. According to Jason, this misinterpretation possibly misdirected the investigation for almost 4 decades. Correcting this information brought the possibility of identifying a new person of interest, bringing the case closer to a possible resolution. Jason also provided more details about the suspect's car, a 1973 blue-painted car with wood panels on the sides, allowing for more focused search efforts. Soon after the release of the updated sketch of the suspect, a woman came forward with a promising lead stating that her uncle, who had a history of sexual assault and abuse, and was in and out of prison, resembled the sketch. He had been released from prison in 1981 and lived in the area at the time of Rachel's abduction, driving a blue-painted car with wood panels, exactly like the one Jason thought was used in Rachel's abduction. However, he had passed away, so without a confession or DNA, there wasn't enough evidence to connect him to Rachel's murder. While the police allegedly took a DNA sample from his daughter to compare with the evidence collected in 2007, the results have not been disclosed. Elaine, since the incident, has devoted her life and Rachel's legacy to preventing other children from suffering the same fate by educating children and parents about the dangers of abductions and crimes. Every year, on the anniversary of Rachel's abduction, her family holds small ceremonies at the park from which she was taken, now named after her. The case remains unsolved, and these events are used to urge the community to approach the Sunset Police if they have any information about her disappearance or the perpetrator's whereabouts. Well, that's all for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribed, hit the like button and share this video. It will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another Unreal True Crime. The horrible story of Marlene Warren. Marlene Warren was born on April 15, 1950, in Michigan, USA. Growing up without a father, she dreamt of having a large and close-knit family from a young age. This dream soon became a reality when she married a man named John, with whom she had 2 children. However, years later, the family faced an unexpected tragedy when John suddenly passed away from an illness, leaving Marlene alone with her 2 young children. Marlene dedicated herself to work, striving to support her children on her own. 6 years after her husband's death, Marlene met a man named Michael Warren. They soon married, and Michael was involved in the used car business. After marrying, he started his own business in this sector. By this time, Marlene was earning good money and chose to invest in Michael's business, also assisting in its management. The business thrived, and the couple expanded it, buying several properties to rent out, improving their financial situation significantly. The family moved to Wellington, a luxurious suburb of Miami, where they bought a large house. Although their life seemed almost perfect, another tragedy struck in 1988 when Marlene's eldest son died in a car accident, deeply affecting her and her younger son, Joseph. After her son's death, Marlene considered selling the rental properties. While the business was profitable, it was also a constant source of worry. Issues with tenants not paying rent or losing their income were common, and Marlene, being kind-hearted and empathetic due to her own past struggles, found it difficult to evict people. However, she and Michael couldn't afford to let people live in their properties for free. Eventually, Marlene wanted to get out of the business to avoid these moral dilemmas. 2 years had passed since her son's death, and the family was beginning to recover and return to normalcy. However, on the morning of May 26, 1990, something terrible and unexpected occurred. Marlene was at home with her son and 3 of his friends who had come over for breakfast. Their kitchen had a view of the driveway. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Marlene went to answer it. Her son saw a white Chrysler parked in front of their house. When Marlene opened the front door, she was greeted by a person dressed as a clown, holding 2 balloons and a bouquet of flowers. Marlene commented, "How cute," but then something unexpected happened. The clown who appeared at Marlene Warren's doorstep suddenly pulled out a gun and shot her in the head. Marlene's son and his friends, who were in the house, rushed to the hallway, only to be met with the shocking sight of Marlene bleeding on the ground. The clown, dressed in full costume, stared at them for a few seconds before returning to the white Chrysler and driving away. Marlene's son, despite having an injured leg, urged his friend to drive after the clown, but they were unable to locate the vehicle. Marlene was quickly taken to the hospital in an unconscious state, and the police began their investigation. They first spoke with everyone in the house at the time of the attack. Marlene's son could not identify the assailant due to the costume, gloves, and wig, noting only that the attacker had very dark eyes. His friends added that the clown was quite tall, and that the work shoes worn were strikingly different from the costume. A neighbor walking their dog near Marlene's house also saw the clown but couldn't provide significant information to the police. The investigators started looking for a white Chrysler and sought other evidence. Their first suspicion fell on Michael, Marlene's husband, who had left for a Miami racetrack that morning and was not at home during the attack. Despite having reasons to believe he was involved, such as the family's fondness for clowns and an anonymous tip to investigate Michael and a 26-year-old woman named Sheila Keene, the police found that Michael was around 110 kilometers away from home, making it physically impossible for him to commit the crime. Sheila Keene, who worked at Michael's used car business, was rumored to be having a secret affair with him. This relationship had been speculated by some colleagues. If Michael was in a relationship with another woman and wanted to leave Marlene, he faced a significant financial loss in a divorce, as most of the family assets were in Marlene's name. Despite the lack of concrete evidence linking Michael and Sheila to the crime, the police still considered their involvement probable. Given the disguise used by the assailant, the police considered whether Sheila could have been the clown. Witnesses couldn't confirm the attacker's gender, and Sheila was known for her assertive character. She handled clients who were late on rental payments, often needing to repossess cars, a job in which she was unyielding, and for which she carried a .38 caliber pistol, the same caliber used to shoot Marlene. After the bullet was removed from Marlene's head, it was determined to be from a .38 caliber gun, raising further suspicions about Sheila's potential involvement in the crime. The police revisited Sheila Keene to inspect her firearm, but Sheila claimed that her gun had either been stolen or lost months before Marlene Warren's shooting, leaving the detectives with no solid leads. During their investigation, they learned that Sheila was divorced and that after leaving her husband's house, Sheila moved into a rented apartment, and there were suspicions that Michael Warren, Marlene's husband, was paying for this accommodation. An interesting discovery awaited the police in their investigation regarding the whereabouts of the clown costume, balloons, and flowers used in the crime. 2 days before the attack on Marlene, a woman had entered a costume shop near Sheila's apartment. The shop was closed at the time, but the woman insisted on being served. She urgently requested a clown costume, a wig, face makeup, and a red nose. Despite being told to return the next day as the shop was closing, the woman persisted, and the employees eventually sold her the items. There were no surveillance cameras in the store, so the police had to rely on the employees' verbal description of the woman, who they described as tall and thin with dark hair. When shown photographs by the detectives, the employees indicated that the woman resembled Sheila. The investigation also traced the balloons and flowers to a supermarket located about a kilometer from Sheila's apartment. The seller reported that a woman matching the description given by the costume shop employees had purchased these items just a few hours before Marlene was shot. He added that the customer behaved rudely and somewhat masculinely. 2 days into the investigation, on May 28, the police were informed that Marlene had succumbed to her injuries, and the case was reclassified as a murder. The detectives continued their investigation, seeking more evidence against Sheila. They obtained a warrant to search her apartment. Concurrently, they received a tip about a white Chrysler parked 13 kilometers from Marlene's residence. Upon inspection, the investigators confirmed it was the same vehicle driven by the assailant. Inside, they found long dark hairs and orange fibers that appeared to be from a clown wig. During a search of Sheila's apartment, the police found identical orange particles and work boots that matched the description given by witnesses, similar to those worn by the clown. However, due to the absence of routine DNA analysis at that time, all the evidence against Sheila was circumstantial, which could lead to her acquittal in court. Detectives then turned their attention to how the clown had acquired the car used to reach Marlene's house. They uncovered that about 1.5 months before Marlene's murder, a man had mistakenly rented a car from one of Michael Warren's main competitors. When this mix-up was reported to Michael, his reaction was notably strange. Rather than informing a customer about a mistaken car rental from one of his competitors, Michael Warren told the man to just leave the car in the parking lot and put the keys inside. Michael then asked an employee to take him and Sheila to the parking lot and instructed the employee to keep quiet about the incident. The employee witnessed Michael and Sheila leaving in the same white Chrysler. This happened shortly after a serious disagreement between Michael and his competitors, where Michael had been giving his competitors a negative image in his advertisements, which they disliked. Detectives decided to investigate Michael's business further and found numerous legal infractions, including tax and insurance manipulation. They also found evidence suggesting that Michael had used illegal methods to repossess cars, even when clients had paid on time and met all conditions. During this investigation, police spoke with an employee who recalled an interesting incident where Michael and Marlene had an argument at work. After Marlene left, Michael asked the employee how much it would cost to make his wife disappear. Although this sounded suspicious, detectives still had no evidence linking Michael to the murder. Nevertheless, he was arrested for various business manipulations and initially sentenced to 8 years in prison, but was released after 4 years. In 2002, Michael married Sheila and moved to another state. Although detectives could never prove Michael's involvement in the murder, they continued to monitor him. After moving, Sheila began introducing herself to new acquaintances as a police officer and had dyed her hair from dark to blonde. She and Michael opened a restaurant and seemed to have built a good life. However, rumors began circulating among their employees that Sheila had murdered Michael's ex-wife. Apparently, an employee stumbled upon information about the crime and discovered that the police had suspected them. Still, without definitive proof, the case remained unresolved until it was reopened in 2013. A new investigative team requested a re-examination of all available evidence, as DNA testing and other forensic technologies had significantly advanced since 1990. It took several years to re-examine the evidence. First, the orange fibers found in Sheila's apartment, the car, and the crime scene were compared, showing they were almost identical. The most significant lead came later when experts took DNA samples from several hairs found in the white Chrysler and compared them to Sheila's DNA, which matched perfectly. This provided irrefutable evidence that Sheila had been in the same car the clown used to drive to Marlene's house. Sheila was arrested in 2017, then 54 years old, and continued to deny her guilt. She was denied bail and awaited trial in jail. Michael insisted he had nothing to do with Marlene's murder and believed Sheila was innocent as well. He hired expensive lawyers for her, and the trial had been prolonged for years. In preparation for the trial, the police uncovered some previously unknown facts. About a year after Marlene Warren's murder, An attorney who had worked with Michael Warren on business matters contacted them. He revealed that approximately a year before the murder, Michael had asked him a very strange question. If a husband kills his wife, what happens to the property registered in her name? Would it go to the husband? The attorney was surprised by this question, but advised Michael that if the husband arranged for an acquaintance to commit the murder and the court couldn't link the husband to the killer, he would inherit the woman's assets. Furthermore, the attorney shockingly advised Michael that if the murderer wore some kind of disguise, like a clown's, they would likely never be identified and thus escape punishment. Another shocking confession came from a man whose deceased father had worked for Michael at the time of the murder. He confessed that his father had helped carry out illegal plans for extra money, such as rolling back odometers to sell cars at higher prices. On the day of the murder, Michael asked his father to dispose of the gun and the car used by the murderer after abandoning the Chrysler in the parking lot. Before dying, the man's father revealed that the second car was hidden in a river canal. The police found the car in the canal, confirming the witness's truthfulness, although no evidence survived. Sheila's trial was repeatedly postponed until a final date was set for May 12, 2023. However, on April 25, something unexpected happened. Sheila pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty she would have faced if she lost the murder trial. Her lawyers stated that Sheila was innocent of the murder, but feared for her life, and thus accepted responsibility for someone else's crime. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison for second-degree murder, with about 5.5 years deducted for the time already served and further reduced for good behavior. She was expected to spend an additional 16 to 24 months in prison. As for Michael, his involvement has not been proven, and he remains free. It's unlikely he will ever be charged with his wife's murder, as there is no direct evidence against him. Marlene's son, the sole member of his family, thanked the detectives for uncovering the truth and keeping the case alive for years. Despite the profound tragedy of his mother's death, he overcame his grief, opened his own small construction business, and rebuilt his life. And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Crime Analysis Central. See you soon. Every day we coexist with evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something inherent in our society. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Sarah Nicole Graham. Sarah Nicole Graham, born on April 1, 1996, in the United States, remains a subject shrouded in mystery as specific details of her birth and early life remain undisclosed. Sarah's upbringing was under the care of her mother in Texas, sharing a joyful childhood with her brother, though their names are absent in the records detailing Sarah's life. Described as a sweet, responsible, and initially shy girl when meeting new individuals, Sarah's spontaneous and lively nature would shine through once she became comfortable. From the information gathered, we learned about her father, Hubert Graham, a direct descendant of the indigenous people of America. This lineage connected Sarah to the Lumbee tribe, predominantly situated in the counties of Robeson, Hoke, and Scotland in North Carolina. The Lumbee tribe emerged from the remnants of extinct tribes, grouping in a recognized area since 1956, when Congress passed the Lumbee Act, officially recognizing them as Native Americans. However, the act also withheld federal recognition benefits, denying them sovereignty, land rights, and other advantages afforded to different tribes. Despite generations of fighting against this discrimination, they remain without a reservation, though they do congregate in a specific area. Pembroke, located in Robeson County, North Carolina, serves as the cultural, economic, and political hub for the Lumbee tribe. Sarah journeyed there in 2014 after finishing high school, possibly aiming to connect with her genealogical roots. At 18, she aspired to relocate to Fairmont, a quaint rural town north of the North Carolina-South Carolina border, to live with her father, Hubert, her stepmother, Connie Graham, and a stepbrother, though details about him remain elusive. By then, Hubert and Connie held positions as assistants to the sheriff of the county, earning them respect within the community. While little is publicly known about Sarah's relationship with her father and stepmother, all signs pointed to her enjoying the newfound connection with her ancestral culture, having grown up in a different state. Upon settling in Fairmont, Sarah eagerly sought employment, quickly landing a job as a receptionist and cashier at Walmart in Pembroke. Her excellent communication skills and friendly demeanor quickly made her an indispensable team member. Sarah was a responsible and kind-hearted young woman, popular among her colleagues, and was beginning to form friendships. In just 2 months of reconnecting with her ethnic roots, Sarah was thriving and genuinely happy. However, on the morning of Wednesday, February 4, 2015, something changed. Although she woke up early and prepared for her 7 a.m. work shift at Walmart, she never arrived. Her supervisor immediately noticed her absence, given her previously consistent punctuality and commitment. That very day, the white Chevrolet van, loaned to her by her father and under his name, was found abandoned. At around 12:15 p.m., police received reports of a seemingly deserted vehicle located several meters from the road, near a cornfield, marking the beginning of a concerning mystery. When the officers approached the area, they were able to confirm that it was indeed the van Sarah usually drove. It was already quite strange that it was parked there, seemingly abandoned and without the young girl in sight. The situation became even murkier when witnesses claimed they had seen the vehicle parked there since 6:45 a.m. This statement set off alarms, as it meant that the van had stopped there just 15 minutes after Sarah had left her house. It was a puzzle that no one could decipher at that moment. The officers inspected the vehicle and the surrounding area for any clues or traces that could guide the investigation into Sarah's whereabouts. However, the task proved difficult. There was no damage to the van, no signs of a struggle around it, and no tracks of shoe prints being dragged on the ground, which could have indicated an abduction. A mysterious aspect of the case revolved around the fact that the van was locked. Speculations were made that someone must have manually locked the door with the car key. However, many older vehicles, like the one Sarah was using, allow the driver to manually lock the doors and close them without using a key. In many cases, cars get locked by accident. With the discovery of the abandoned van, the Fairmont Police Department activated the missing person search protocol. Along with police officers, 140 local volunteers and a canine unit participated. However, there were challenges, the first being that Robeson County is the largest in North Carolina, making the search extensive and primarily in a rural area. As a result, the search was not easy, and even a helicopter had to be used. Concurrently, the process of printing missing person flyers began. Sarah was described on the flyers as a Native American young woman, 5'7" tall, weighing 150 pounds, with short brown hair, wearing corrective glasses and braces. Robeson County has just over 100,000 permanent residents, though it is known to temporarily house many migrant workers. The area also has a rather negative reputation, being known for significant drug trafficking activity. This is due to its strategic location, situated halfway between Miami, Florida, and New York on Interstate 95, making it a popular stop for traffickers. Amidst this scenario, with many people coming and going without proper records or tracking, figuring out what happened to the young girl seemed like a Herculean task. Local and state officials joined the search, but without significant results. A month later, FBI agents joined the search, yet they too were unable to find any trace of Sarah. Her family had no contact with her, nor did they receive ransom demands or any communication from supposed kidnappers asking for favors in exchange for her safe return. The general consensus in the town was that she had vanished into thin air. On March 18, 6 months after Sarah's disappearance, Connie, her stepmother, was dismissed from her position as an assistant at the sheriff's office. She had worked there for 23 years, and her sudden dismissal raised eyebrows and fueled suspicion and rumors. The sheriff announced the news but refused to provide further details, labeling it a personal decision. He also stated that the dismissal was not related to Sarah's disappearance, though this did little to quell public suspicions. In a statement, he also expressed understanding of the public's eagerness for information, but requested patience, stating that releasing specific case details could jeopardize the integrity of the investigation and hinder efforts to find Sarah. He assured that the Robeson County Sheriff's Office detectives, in collaboration with the FBI, were working tirelessly on the case and vowed not to stop until Sarah was found. After Connie's dismissal was made public, sources close to the investigation said that the FBI considered Connie a suspect in the case, adding that an arrest and charges could be forthcoming. Once this information was disseminated, all eyes turned to the Graham residence. However, as time passed, the hypothesis that the stepmother was involved in Sarah's disappearance was never proven. In fact, she was not arrested for questioning, nor were charges brought against her, and she was never named a person of interest. Despite this, public opinion on social media at the time and over the years has consistently suggested that she might be involved. While there hasn't been any official statement, rumors suggested that Connie's son and Sarah's stepbrother was a problematic boy, and that he was responsible for the young girl's disappearance. The rumors spread on social media talked about a romantic interest bordering on obsession from the stepbrother, to which Sarah never responded. On the contrary, she seemed annoyed by his persistence. A year after Sarah's disappearance, there was very little information available about her case. It seemed as if the earth had swallowed her up. On the first anniversary, FBI agents and local officers conducted an operation where they distributed flyers with Sarah's details and images to drivers passing through the area where the teenager's van was found. At that time, the officers insisted that although they had little information about the young girl, who had only been living in the place for 2 months when she disappeared, it was clear that her disappearance was not usual. They stated that she would not have left without notice, and if she had, she would have contacted her parents to at least inform them that she was well and in another place. In December 2018, human remains were found near the railroad tracks about 3 kilometers from the lumber bridge in Riley County. Later, it was determined that they belonged to a female, and immediately, people thought it could be Sarah. On December 13, 2018, it was announced that Sarah's dental records were sent to Riley County to see if there was a match with the young girl. A second set of dental records was sent to the office of the forensic chief medical officer in Riley. However, it was later confirmed that it was not Sarah. In 2022, the Federal Bureau of Investigation made another appeal asking for information to find the teenager, stating that although they had received hundreds of clues, they still needed that missing piece to bring Sarah home. The agent reminded that there is a $5,000 reward for information that leads to finding Sarah's whereabouts. After the video was published, the young girl's father broke the silence he had maintained for years. He expressed his feelings about how the agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, treated him in the case of his daughter Sarah's disappearance. At the time of his statement, he served as chief of the Roland Police Department and mentioned that despite holding that position, he needed to be treated as a father, as Sarah was still his daughter regardless of the circumstances. It is worth remembering that previously, Hubert had worked as a deputy sheriff of another county when his daughter disappeared, and this somehow led to him being viewed very critically and always being under suspicion. Hurt by the whole situation that kept him always in the public eye, despite there being no real evidence against him. Hubert said that over the years, the FBI had barely contacted him in relation to Sarah, and he recalled a call in which they asked him about his daughter's orthodontics due to the finding of some human remains, which ultimately turned out not to be Sarah's, but no one informed him of the results. He found out like any other citizen when the media published the outcome of the investigation of the female remains found near the train. The truth was, in the investigators' opinion, there was someone close to Sarah who was not revealing all the information they had, and this had given rise to numerous rumors and speculations about what had happened. Hubert expressed his deep concern about not knowing anything about his daughter's whereabouts after she came to live with him and his wife 2 months before disappearing. Despite the difficult situation, he maintained hope that Sarah was alive and stated that no one had provided him with solid evidence to indicate otherwise. He clarified that he was not an indifferent father to what had happened and offered his arguments for keeping a low profile. He said that although he had experience as a detective due to his 23 years in law enforcement, he preferred to stay away from the investigation to avoid any perception of influence or interference in the process. However, that didn't seem to work out quite well either, as he then received criticism for being lenient and not offering cooperation. He pointed out that his position was quite difficult, as whether he did or did not do something generated abundant criticism. To the father's statement, the FBI responded in a very institutional way. Through a public affairs specialist, they responded to Hubert's concerns about routine contact in relation to Sarah's case and explained that they had always spoken with the family when there were updates in the investigation, but they would not necessarily make a personal notification for already known information. Despite the pain and uncertainty, Sarah's father shared that there came a point where he had to surrender to God's will and not let worries dominate his life. He affirmed that ultimately God knew best and would handle the situation according to his will, regardless of what the final outcome was. On June 13, 2023, special agents and officers from Robeson County conducted a search at the Graham family's home looking for new clues about Sarah's disappearance. The sheriff's office stated at that time that they were doubting the version given by the father and stepmother about the day the young girl was last seen. The statement from the sheriff's office indicated that they had not been able to independently confirm the family's version that Sarah left for work the day she disappeared, which occurred more than 8 years ago. Now, after such a long time has passed since her last sighting, Sarah's case is being reviewed again. In a Facebook post, the sheriff's office confirmed that homicide detectives, the FBI, and a tracker dog from the North Carolina Troopers Association had started a search, although no details were provided about the location where it was taking place. According to the authorities, Sarah is one of several Native American women who have mysteriously disappeared in the same area in recent years. During the summer of 2017, it was reported that 3 women, 2 of them belonging to the North Carolina tribe, were found dead in the city of Lumberton in Robeson County. The cases have not been solved, which has raised fears of the existence of a possible serial killer, according to a news report. Despite this concerning situation, the sheriff's office did not mention any possible connection between these cases and Sarah's disappearance in their statement. The case of Sarah Nicole Graham remains a mystery, leaving her family and community seeking answers for over 8 years. Over time, authorities have conducted thorough investigations and searches, but to this date, there has been no significant breakthrough in the case of Sarah Nicole Graham. The lack of concrete information has led to various theories and speculation, while Sarah's family continues to wait anxiously for the day they can find answers about her whereabouts. Despite the efforts of the authorities, the community's cooperation, and the leads received, Sarah's case remains an unsolved puzzle. Her family continues to cry out for justice and longs for the day when the truth about her disappearance is unveiled. Meanwhile, the memory of Sarah endures in the minds of those who knew and loved her, and the hope of finding her alive persists. As the investigation continues, it is hoped that new leads and developments will shed light on this dark and painful episode, bringing the long-awaited peace and closure to her family and community. And well, that's all for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support of my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon.